This is the day 2 for the second CCAPPTIA conference on the 29th of June 2021. So in this session, we will have 5 speakers. And so, and I think for each speaker, can you please keep your presentation within 15 minutes? And after that, I think according to our schedule now, we should have approximately 10 to 15 minutes for further discussions. So in this session, Yufeng Travis will be the chair for this session. So I think by now I will give the chair and the floor to Travis. Thank you, Travis.
Thank you, Adolf. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Travis Lin. I'm right now working at University of Manitoba as a researcher. And thank you for your participation again. Since we have a tight schedule, we will just jump right into the presentation. Each presentation will be about 15 minutes. And then after that, we will take 1 or 2 questions for each presentation. If we would like you to, you can either raise your hand or like type your questions in the box. Okay, so our first presenter today is Dr. Tei. He's an associate professor in applied economics at the University of Georgia. He has been part of several research groups and advisory board on port economics and maritime transport. Dr. Tei, please share your screen when you are ready. I will now give you the.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you can see my presentation and you can hear me, right?
No problem.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having me here to discuss this really interesting topic. My presentation is mainly focused on trying to link adaptation and mitigation strategies of ports and challenges that these ports are facing in terms of planning and the energy transition. That is something that is actually impacting a lot of the different ports. So I will try to kind of have the problem defined, give a bit of backgrounds, and then a bit of critical discussion on what's next. The aim of the presentation is actually kick off a discussion on the topic rather than giving you conclusions, because I'm not there yet. But I would like to discuss with you the impact of planned energy transition on port investments and planning. I'm doing this through literature review and port website assessment, and such the first bit of what will be the final outcome of the research. This research that I'm presenting is funded by a special funding of the University of Genoa and is focusing on energy transition and the impact of energy transition on shipping markets. First of all, a bit of discussion on what might impact our discussion on the energy transition. Obviously, there are the ship-related trends, such as the growing size of the ship, obviously the organization of the shipping services that might impact what is coming from ports. Obviously, we have a general rise of the ship. I took statistics until 2019 for obvious reasons, because we have already discussed about the pandemic. I didn't want to go on that topic again, but obviously there would be impacts. There is an environmental agenda that is discussed differently in by different stakeholders. Obviously, we have an ongoing technological trends in terms of automation, and we have an ongoing trends in terms of digitalization. And what is climate change in this? Well, climate change is often kind of implicitly discussed and linked with all these kind of elements, because when we are planning to have different kind of ships or organize differently our services, when we are thinking about automated terminals or the digitalization of certain operations, we implicitly always need to adapt to what will be the climate in the future, because our long-term investments, all of these. And a lot of these are actually impacting on the environment in different ways. We have seen a lot of papers and news about the environmental effects of blockchain, for instance, and this is quite important. And if we think about the environment per se, we see that there are a lot of ongoing international efforts in dealing with climate and environment. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are just one of the examples, and starting from 2020 have been cited by more or less every port associations around the world, or port authority, depending on national legislation. For instance, in Italy, it's compulsory to draft an environmental planning that it takes into consideration, refer to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal and refer to climate change and environmental impacts. And at regional level, in Europe, we saw the Green Deal, so special funding to ports to adapt, to mitigate and adapt to different climate events, and the so-called recovery fund that most countries have to recover from the pandemic as well. So those are all elements that will probably have long-term elements. But when we think about innovation in the port sector and we look at different scientific papers and reports from different stakeholders, we quite often see a push towards the definition of smart ports that somehow has multidimensional goals, but never clearly cite climate as a key goal. It's part of the overall discussion, obviously. It's part of what ports are dealing with, but is often perceived as a complementary target to be achieved rather than a primary objective, unless we are talking about environmental planning, and that somehow is quite often treated differently, at least in general terms. And something that I can assure you is often there as an environmental target in EU ports is becoming more and more important, but is not often linked with what is defined as innovation. And I took the energy transition an example of this issue, because every ports have their environmental planning, their assessments, a kind of a green balance scorecard, etc. There are several regulation and legislation at regional and national level. Obviously, we have the international standards, some quite often promoted by IMO or related departments. But if we look at the websites, climate change is always seen as something far away. The issues of planning medium, short term against long term, and this is obviously well known in the literature, because only few ports have these kind of really long term priorities that cannot be seen with actual impacts in the short term in order to show as real results of the current management. And this is a big issue. Since I'm passionate of the topic, I know that I tend to talk a lot, too much, probably. So I just thought it was nice at slides 5 to have a short window. Preliminary outcomes of the ongoing research are related with the phenomenon that is connected with the path dependence of the institution. So in different cultural environment, if there have always been a certain tendency of taking care of environmental thing, there is also a particular area of the ports that are also taking into consideration about climate. Or if traditionally the climate has a huge impact on port operation, there will be such kind of activity, while there are other local areas that are not used to take into consideration climate, and as such, they reiterate this kind of neglecting behavior. There is also the marketing issues. Mitigation is something that can be also solved as an outcome of port management, while adaptation is not that easy, and as such is always something related to an adaptation strategy. There is also an issue of networks in innovating in such kind of elements, especially when we come in the side of energy transition, because there are stakeholders that are interconnected and one choice is impacting the others, and ports quite often, and I will provide you with an example, are actually impacted by the choices, investment and planning strategies of other stakeholders. And as such, they always need to step back and wait for the market to decide what to do, where to go, and then they can invest. And this is kind of delaying what they are actual strategies. And then there is the poor governance elements. This is something that I observe, especially in the southern part of Europe. So where concession agreements are quite strict, and it's really hard to change them or to propose along the way of the contract duration incentive to do something different or something new. And this is kind of delaying adaptation strategies, because quite a lot of infrastructure are under concession agreement, and the rules cannot be changed suddenly. There is a negotiation elements, and somehow who is managing the infrastructure under concession is actually not incentivized to adapt that infrastructure to future climate changes, because quite likely they will be not in charge of that concession, or is not sure they will return on the investment if they perform the kind of adaptation investments. And as such, all these elements are impacting the link between climate change, ports, investment, planning, especially when it comes to energy transition. But energy transition is kind of an exception quite often, because if we look at how ports are dealing with energy transition, they are quite often trying to use that not just as a mitigation strategies, not just as an adaptation strategies, but also to perform better. Energy transition within the different investments related with climate change and the adaptation of parts of climate change is actually a good opportunity to make new businesses. Obviously, we still need to understand that there is an ecosystem, an interconnected ecosystem as all shipping. So whatever we do with energy transition, it needs to be reflected to what happens to ships, okay? So that is something that is still there. And this is also reflected by a first literature review, a literature assessment. There are plenty of papers, more than 200, that are dealing with this topic. More than 80% of those papers are actually quite recent, less than 10 years. And that's good, but they always acknowledge that climate is not the primary keyword of this kind of behavior. And most of the investments of ports are really interconnected with what is happening to the ship. So it's the ship problem that is kind of impacting the decision-making process of port authority and port management bodies. Quite often, not just as a way to invest in infrastructure, hard technologies, but also as a way to manage better the resources that ports have, as in the case of soft technologies. And recently there is AIS and artificial intelligence, big data analytics, etc., are becoming more and more important. But the big focus is always getting the better performance. And when we deal with these climate change elements is problematic, because then ports need to invest in something that is not just producing an environmental benefit, but also performance. And this is where it's tricky, okay? Adaptation vs mitigation. Because performance might be related with resilience, with rate of return, efficiency, capacity. But whenever we are thinking about impact on environment, we are always thinking about carbon footprint, or again, resilience. But it's really hard to put a number on that in terms of the benefits of the advantages on the performance. And as such, ports, at least in many countries in Europe, are having a lot of issues in there. And if we take the example of the energy transition, we see that a lot of the discussion at a scientific level and an industry level is related with the bunkering. That is the perception of the energy transition. And that is led by ship owner, and obviously that generates frictions. And this is why a lot of ports are actually delaying the decision in investing. Big ports are doing that; they have the financial capability, but medium, small ports that are the strict majority of the ports, they cannot have these financial capability. And the energy transition is actually pushing towards new business models in terms of having the ports not just as something that is providing energy to ships, but also producing energy for itself through offshore wind farms, through tidal power supply, etc. And they are linking adaptation to new business models, such as in the terms of energy production. And this is actually facilitating a lot the overall equilibrium. I know that I'm around the 15 minutes, so I will speed up a bit on this, just highlighting that whenever we are thinking about the interconnection, the interface between port and ship, we are thinking about imbalance, about time horizons. And this is actually impacting the profitability of different investment, but also the capability of assessing and planning the right moves to adapt ports towards the future, to what is gonna happen. Mitigation is easier, adaptation is less easier, and energy transition is actually helping out to align convenience in short and long term, and this is quite good. Obviously, there is always a trade-off between port efficiency and scale economies as well, and this is something that needs to be taken into consideration. What's the impact of the energy transition of ports? Well, ports are not the ones that are developing solutions, are the ones that work together with maritime stakeholders to apply new solutions. And it's here that the energy transition might lead to different processes, obviously in accordance with the path dependence issue that I already spoke about. This might impact on better administration of the complexity in terms of managing the port assets and with different stakeholders, obviously. And also as a way to promote different kind of competition and business models as well. This is just a review of what is happening at the moment and a bit of critical thinking, obviously. But what I'm going to do next is obviously collecting data in order to perform a statistical assessment of the different strategies of different ports, differentiating with the size of ports. Because whenever we think about the energy transition, the link with climate, with the environment, etc., we often have ports that are big in size and they can perform certain kind of investments, but we leave behind the majority of our ports that are actually medium and small, and that is where is much more complex than that. And obviously this will impact the port competition and then the operability, operation, performance of this port, and this is something that we need to dig a bit more, obviously. Whatever comments and questions you have, I'm really happy to answer if I can, or to take them on board for the future step of the research. Thank you very much. I'm a couple of minutes late. I apologize for this.
Thank you, Dr. Dave. Are there any questions? Yes, we have one. Adolf asks, what do you think will be the impact of COVID-19 on the energy transition in port?
Well, to be honest, at least in certain parts of the world, that was actually quite positive because it kind of gave different countries a push to invest in this kind of solutions. In Europe, we saw, and in US partially as well, in other countries as well, we saw an incredible amount of money put in this infrastructure upgrade, often linking environmental performance and as such energy transition, digitalization that it might also help because somehow they might be complementary. And they often refer to United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and as such also to climate adaptation, not just mitigation. So all these things, in terms of this topic, actually COVID-19 wasn't bad because otherwise we would never have that amount of money to perform those work. And at least in Europe, there is a deadline. Everything needs to be almost finalized in 5 years from now. So it will also compress the timing. That is another issues in many countries, and especially in Europe. So my opinion, not bad. But I understand that obviously for other reasons, it was a drama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think so far we only have one question. Then we'll Thank you for the presentation. It was really intriguing, Dr. Tei. And then now we will proceed to the presentation number 2. Dr. Poo, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, nice. So Dr. Poo is from Liverpool John Moss University. He's a researcher interested in analyzing the transportation systems and climate change. Please feel free to share your screen when you are ready, Dr. Poo.
Wait for a second. I should take in charge in this one. Yes. Can you see my screen already?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you, everyone. This is my presentation, which will talk about the climate resilience of ports and shipping infrastructure. And because on the description on the catalog of this event, and the host asking me about what is my relationship between climate change, and then I just instantly respond that okay, I write work, I like plant-based food, so I just take a few seconds to introduce myself. Like, this is my academic background, and my thesis topic is climate change adaptation for seaports and airports. And then I got some publication related to climate change, and then mostly they are on adaptation, which means I try to find some solution for the existing transportation system, like for the seaports, for the airports, for the whole global shipping networks. So maybe because there are loads of people talking about the consequence of the climate change and etc. already, so I will be quick on the introduction. And then here is one of them. Then we found that there's a loads of studies talking about the vulnerabilities due to the climate extreme, like the flooding, the raining, the precipitation, the sea level rise, some etc. But for IPCC, they have announced that apart from flooding, apart from the sea level rise, there's also some other issue facing by the transportation system, just like maybe some heavier storm, maybe hurricane in the Asia, and also this is sea level rise. And then apart from the common climate extreme that we understand, we will also face some difficulties by the heat wave, just like what happened in the Europe mostly every year. They got some heavy heat wave, and then some people will die. And then apart from that, there will be some delay on the transportation system. And for snowing as well, because there's a more snowing event in the winter as well. So there will be some more disruption for the whole transportation system. So that's why here is some review on seaports and the airports and the consequence facing on sea level rise and flooding. So, and what I have done in these 3 years is that I have tried to look at how can we adapt to this new weather or new climate, how can the whole port system can work together and also work independently to adapt to the climate in their own place. So I think this is my framework by the literature review. And for climate adaptation of seaports, we have to look at it in the international way and his situation in the whole global system, but also in regionally, like how can they adapt to the weather in their own city. So, and this is the IPCC that knows that there's a loads of impact, adaptation, and vulnerability summary by the IPCC. And then one of them is very important because some of the speakers are talking about, oh, how can we forecast the future climate event, because it doesn't exist or exist in the future way, because they may have more severe event or more frequent event. So, and one of the findings is that it will increase, the climate will change gradually in the same curve, like they will increase the temperature mean, so it represents more hot weather and more severe climate events. So, and this is what I have designed in my PhD study as well. This is the climate change risk indicator for the seaports in the United Kingdom. So I have taken out some of the climate data from different places, like the Met Office in the UK, and also some authority working on the sea level indicator. So, I have taken those data. Then why I have chosen evidential reasoning, because some of the data is incomplete, like we cannot have the full set of forecasting data, and then some of the data is also in different format, in also quantitative and qualitative data. So the evidential reasoning and utility mapping altogether, we can work out index for representing the climate risk indicator for the seaports from this interesting set of data. So, and then I will catch up the time also. Okay, and this is the, like, what I've done for how to use the evidential reasoning and mapping, but I won't talk in depth on this now. So the data will collect from this kind of authority, and then you see we can collect the whole data from the UK. So we can find out some higher percentile data and temperature data from here, and then we can set up the criteria. So this is the whole step. The first thing is defining the hierarchy and also setting up the criteria grade, and then evaluate the seaports by the grades and by the corresponding data or corresponding local data of each seaport. And then we will transform the data from the bottom to the top, and then we will synthesize the evaluation by this kind of algorithm. So after we have all of this, we got some ranking for different seaports, and this is it right now. And then we have noticed that in January and in July, which means in the mid of summer and the mid of winter, they will have the two crash of climate risks, and then they will have different types of climate risks. So they will have different of climate risk level in different cities. So this is also, so just like this one, FD, and there's two seaports I have represent here for example. Like FDR is Felixstowe, which is the biggest seaport in the UK, and which is in the south of the part of the UK, and then GRA should be a seaport around Glasgow. So they will represent different properties and on the CCRI trend for the entire year. So, and then we can also by the climate forecasting data in the future, like the temperature rise, there's a drier summer and then some wetter winter, so they will have more snowing, more precipitation. So we can foresee that we will have more severe risk and then higher CCR index rate in the future. So this is what I have done in the first part, and then I try to standardize the climate risk statistically by my method. So so we can assess more climate threat by this kind of technique, and also, but apart from that, we need to also look, apart from the climate data, we also have to look at the capacity, the sensitivity, and also some economical factors. So, and the exposure, which means that how the people, how the livelihood, or in our way is the seaports, how they are facing the climate change or facing the climate weather. So sensitivity will be the degree which is affected by either adversely or beneficially from some climate stimuli. And also adaptive capacity, which means the potential system to adapt to the climate variance or climate change or any other behaviors. So, and after I've set up CCLI, and then I have extended my study on how to also indicate sensitivity and the adaptive capacity for the seaport. So we have included the environment, the bioasset, the economy sensitivity, which means maybe there's talking about how is it a very green place? Is it a very high revenue for the country? So we have accommodate more data, and this data is generated from some question. But sorry, the weight of this kind of factors is generated from some questionnaire from the experts, which may be is an audience in here as well. So here is some indicator. So the approach is nearly the same. So I will talk about it again. But we can see that taking the same set of seaports, for example, again, we can find that the sensitivity and the adaptive capacity also have different kind of pattern for on the seaports. They're totally different thing. So we have to accommodate all the data together, and then it can be a very useful index for the whole city planning. So because it provides a platform for comparing the seaport resilience levels, which is good for the government to implement the policy afterwards. So, and also I have just done UK example only. This is maybe just an example, and we can extend the study in a larger scale. Like if we're talking about the whole Atlantic region, we will find more difference between different country or and different seaports. So we can have a bigger circle for like some resilience planning and port grouping for some disaster management. So, and then because I think time is quite running out as well. So I have also taken some city for a centrality analysis, which is the global assessment I have mentioned before. The previous slide I have presented is the local one, the regional one. How can they assess the climate risk or climate resilience for the whole city? And then on this side, which will be some centrality analysis, and then which will, well, I got some finding as well, but I think time is running out, so I will skip it. But I have just found for the centrality analysis, I have tried to assess the new shipping route for the global system, to see how the container shipping route changes in the future because of the climate change. So we can see something like this. The more hazards will have some more disruption, and then some routes will go to some less disrupted city, and then we found that the regional and international risks are independent. So we have to get more study on this afterwards. So finally, we will, in the future, we want to have some comprehensive index in the future, and then we can have maybe some company assessment for some cost benefit assessment, and then we can work on some other systems, some other topics, and also include some carbon footprint and net zero analysis in the future. So nomads is an island. I hope I can have some chance to work with you guys in the future and work out some solution or some new assessment on climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Booth. That was quite interesting. And I believe we still have a little bit time to take one question. So anyone? Oh, okay. I think for now I don't see anyone yet. So, but anyway, thank you, Dr. Boo. We'll
Thank you so much.
to the next presentation. The next presenter is Dr. Afenyo. He's from University of Manitoba, a researcher and instructor at the University of Manitoba. He has authored and co-authored 30 plus publications comprising papers in top-tier journals, conference proceedings, technical and scientific reports, and book chapters. Please share your screen when you are ready, Dr. Afenyo.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
clearly.
All right. Yeah, so today I'm going to have a discussion with you. This is actually a preliminary work that we are undertaking. Basically, we want to look at the role of insurance in Arctic shipment. So basically, what is the case for insurance during Arctic shipment? So today I'll present to you an integrated insurance underwriting tool for Arctic shipment. So by way of this presentation, we want to look at the moral question for oil spill insurance. So basically, why do we even need to have an insurance for shipping? I mean, when an oil spill happens, is it really important that we do this? Because the cases, currently, there is no insurance scheme for ships going to the Arctic. A lot of insurance companies are finding it extremely difficult to insure ships going to the Arctic, mainly because there is lack of information. We also know that the Arctic is an area that is relatively unknown. There are a lot of factors that are still unknown about the Arctic. So there's always this dilemma, or there is this confusion as to the factors to consider. How do we really insure ships in the Arctic? Why do we even need to do that? Then the methodology that we actually adopted, I'll actually present a scenario and finally some discussions and conclusions. I just want to acknowledge the kind support, financial support from the GNICE project, and also the Social Science and Humanity Research Council of Canada, and of course, in-kind support from CCAPPTIA.com. This is actually an extension of work that we have been doing together here at the University of Manitoba, and also with some colleagues around the world. These are some of the publications that have come out of this work. This is actually an extension of these works that we have done. So quite recently, we got a paper published in the Journal of Risk Analysis, an international journal. And this work is actually a little bit of an extension or a beginning of a new work to look at how we could actually extend a model that we developed to include a capability to be able to predict the insurance premium for the art, or when we are shipping, when we are shipping the art. So now the moral question is, first of all, as we all know, I think previous speakers have spoken about the Arctic as being a very strategic place these days, especially because of climate change and the potential for shipping to increase in this area. This therefore means that a lot of ships are going to go there, and insurance companies do have the headache of thinking about how are they going to insure these ships. Because first of all, there are a lot of unknowns. Now, when ships go there, like we saw yesterday, there could be cruise ships, but of course, they could also be tanker ships, so basically carrying oil. But when an accident happens, there's likelihood that we could have some oil spills. So basically, when that happens, who are affected? Is it just the community? Is it the government, or who are the receiving end of all this? What are the losses indeed from this oil spill? And we have seen in the past that these losses do not only affect, let's say, properties, but of course it affects the culture of the people there. It affects their way of life. Even some of them, if you go to the Canadian Arctic, it actually affects even the way they hunt for food, and also even their spirituality. Right now, is there any insurance to the polluter? That's another question. So basically, what has happened over the years is some insurance companies have been hesitant to insure these kind of problems, mainly because these are just like a one-time event. So basically, you can see that an oil spill will happen maybe once in a blue moon. So do you basically pour in money to do that? Or the other side is some companies say, okay, if that's the case, we have the insurance, and so even if an oil spill happen or this kind of events happen, no problem. So they wouldn't really take precautionary measures. So the question, will companies continue to pollute because there is insurance? You know, these are things that are a bit dicey for a lot of companies. But the other side is, will companies pour in money knowing that, oh, this event is just going to occur once and that is it? Or instead, like BP, for example, did, what they actually did was to diversify their portfolio. So basically, they put in money somewhere so that should something like this happen, they can fall on it rather than, put it in insurance. So these are the questions that both the insurance companies and also the companies that, for example, BP and ExxonMobil and other oil companies will be thinking about whether to go for insurance or they should rather save some money, diversify it, and when something like this happens, they are able to actually do something about it, maybe pour in that money and take care of people. But mind you, when the BP oil spill happened, even up till now, some of the people are still complaining. The effects are still being felt so many years after that incident. So they've still really not been compensated the way they have to be compensated, because there was no specific scheme as to how this was going to be done. This was done basically, maybe this person is affected. This is what we think we should give, maybe some kind of flat rate. Yeah, and recently, if you are following the news, you hear about the Suez Canal blockade by the MV Ever Given. This basically block about 12% of global trade, and Lloyd Register puts the estimate at $400 million. I'm talking about United States dollars of global trade being lost per hour due to the blockage of this particular canal. And Alliance puts its projection at 0.4% reduction of annual growth rate. And we also saw, I don't know if you follow the news, but one of the things that happened was the Mauritius oil spill. When the Mauritius oil spill happened, there was no way of determining who is responsible for what. So who is going to pay for this particular oil spill? Will it be the Japanese who own the ship, or is it going to be the Mauritius government that is going to compensate for the people? Who is really responsible for it? And it looks like the ship didn't also have insurance. So this becomes like a bit of a problem. Then whose fault is it? Who takes the responsibility when these things really happen? There is actually a gray area when we are talking about this. And is it that there is an international organization that is going to enforce this currently? Yes, there is, but they are just international instruments we are supposed to follow. But the people who bear the most, or who are mostly affected, are the Mauritius people in this case, and or the government, basically, to find a way to remedy the situation and also deal with the consequences that come with the oil spill. We all know, most of us would be aware, the reason when the MV Ever Given blocked the Suez Canal, Russia actually made a very strong case for Arctic shipping again. If you are not aware, one of the reasons why there is a strong case for Arctic shipping is about the reduction in distance and the saving of money. As you can see from Shanghai to Rotterdam, if, for example, you want to go to the Suez Canal, it's going to take you 90,500 kilometers. That's the distance. But when you use the Northern Sea route, it's going to reduce tremendously to 15,793 kilometers. And ladies and gentlemen, this is quite a substantial reduction in distance. And this will translate not just into saving of cost, but saving of reduction of CO2 as well. So basically, Russia made a very strong case, and they say, you know what, if we were using Arctic shipping, or we were using the Northern Sea routes, that amount of money, that amount of time would have been saved. So now, because of all these, if the future we are going to look at Arctic shipping more rigorously, I must say that currently Arctic shipping is going on, especially through the Northern Sea route, which is the Russian side of the Arctic, but not so much of the Northwest Passage, which is the Canadian side. But projections are that this might actually be picking rather fast, especially because of climate change. And so there's an urgent need for an effective insurance premium calculation tool for the Arctic. In order to do this, we need to have a full consideration from the needs and specific characteristics of the region that we are talking about. So here I'm referring to the Arctic. Currently, such a tool is not in literature. We actually developed a preliminary tool, which we have published, but we are looking to expand its capacity so that it can have the insurance component to it. Now, in order for us to do that, we actually embark on a field trip to get enough data. So we were on board the Amazon, one of the Canadian icebreaker ships, to collect data and see for ourselves what is really happening in the Arctic. So how feasible is it, and how do we account for all these when we are calculating what ships owners are supposed to pay? So in order for us to do that, we conducted some survey. We involved not just government officials, but insurance companies, scientists, and other professionals that are involved in Arctic shipping. So what we basically did was to expand a model that we already have called the OSGSS, and put the insurance premium calculator in it in order to have this comprehensive model that we are trying to produce and basically improve its capability of prediction. So basically, this is the methodology adopted. So first of all, we solicit some factors from literature through reviews, and then also through some experts. And then through this, we develop a mental picture, and then the qualitative part of the model. Just for you to know that it's actually a Bayesian model. And from this, we actually developed the quantitative one. The data being used here are like shipping data, environmental data, as well as what we got from the express elicitation and value-based extraction. This we then extended and then used in calculating the insurance premium. The details, I don't want to go bore you so much details, because this is just not work, and then we can have more discussions later if you want to know more about this. So basically, this is just a short form of the model. It has like the accident components. When the accident happens, then there is a release. The release then will undergo weathering and transport processes. These processes may be affected socially, environmentally, economically. And then, of course, there is remediation methods, of course, like dispersants, use mechanical recovery, in situ burning, and these together we could use calculate the total impact. Like you are aware, the basis for this model is actually the Bayes theorem, which is proposed by Mr. Bayes. It's actually based on the conditional probability. So like I said, the data collection, these are the people we contacted. So that's the ship right there, the Amazon. So we had like scientists and scholars, government officials, officials. We have insurance companies, employees that we contacted. The Coast Guard, of course, ship operators, right holders. Right holders here in Canada, we are talking about the indigenous population. So basically, once we got the OSDSS running, we applied the premium principle. So for those of us who are not really familiar with the insurance premium, we have the pure premium being the claim frequency times the claim severity. And this we break down into the third equation right there, which is the losses plus the LAE plus UW expense by UW profit. I will not go so much into details, but this is actually the equation that we integrated into the OSDSS. Yeah, so basically, when we using the OSDSS, then we describe the present value of loss. That is, Y being the loss in first year, loss plus loss in second year, all over 1 plus R plus loss in third year, 1 plus R all squared. Where R here is the discount rate, discount for future cash flows, the present ones. Okay, so there are different characteristics of vectors that we used, and like we said, these factors like accidents, like the release and all that has been incorporated into the model. So once that was done, eventually we came to equation 5 right there. Again, I don't want to bore you with the details. So then we apply this to a case scenario right there in Nunavut in Canada. As you can see, that's the map. This is one of a potential area that have an oil spill, and when it happens, the impact will be devastating. So the base case that we use, basically, we look at the experience of the captain, the location, the season, the wind speed, if there ice present, what is the temperature at that time, the type of accidents that probably we look at, maybe grounding, collision, etc. What type of ship it is, and what interventions are being. So once we get this scenario, we actually simulated.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, Dr. Afenyo. We are running out of time. If you can,
yeah, I'm just running out. Yeah. So so we have our results, and the results are in terms of probability and loss. And as you can see, we have the loss for grounding, the loss for to use the natural attenuation, and that of sinking. And of course, we have other interventions like in-situ burning and then tanker accidents. So like I said, we now actually develop a new methodology for assessing the loss to be used for insurance premium. And this methodology basically uses the Bayes theorem. And the question that we should be asking ourselves is, to what extent would insurance companies commit to insuring ships going to an uncertain place like the Arctic? That's a big question that we need to think about. Our model actually is comprehensive and incorporates a lot of things like the land claim agreement. And in the future, we hope that we can actually make this model even more comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we can take one question. So if you have one, please raise your hand or just type it in the box. Well, since no one, I have one. So I was, I talked to someone before, like, about this, like the Arctic shipping insurance, and that guy's like, he's from the actuarial, like also like, a PhD student, and he told me this is a niche insurance. So do you think how affordable like these insurance things will be for the company? Like low,
Whether it's
like a low demand.
Whether it to be affordable, you mean?
Yeah, like how affordable it will be.
Just like any other insurance, I mean, for a start, it's not going to be cheap. that's for sure. And the fact that there are a lot of unknowns means that you want to make sure that you have enough money. You charge the client a lot of money, but of course you want to be doing it scientifically. You don't just arbitrarily charge anybody. That's why this particular method is being developed. So to answer the question, that is actually the purpose of this research.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Afenyo. That was a quite intriguing topic. Let's move on to the next presentation then. Dr. Faury, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Great to have you here. So our next presenter is Dr. Faury. He is an associate professor of supply chain management and logistics in EM Normandy, France. And his research interests are how risk management, port development, and the legal framework affects the attractiveness of Arctic shipping lanes for cruise tourism, container traffic, and bulk shipping. Please share your screen when you are ready, Dr. Faury.
So, here it is.
Thank you.
So, you can go. So I have, what, 15 minutes max? Yes. Okay.
Yes, please control it like within 15 minutes, so we can take more questions if possible.
I try to be a KISS approach. So I'm going to present you as nothing to do, in fact, at this level with the Arctic shipping. What I'm trying to present to you is a work in progress with Laurent Freddy from Cage Business School and Nicolas Montier from EM Normandy, but the impact of the COVID-19 upon the hierarchy of the port Mediterranean seas and northern range. So first, content is really fast and simple. In short introduction, I explain you the different methodology we used for this article and show you some preliminary results regarding ports and islands, and finally a conclusion. So, as we have seen this morning with, previously, with Theonode Boom, the related impact of the 2008 crisis among the container flows and international trade. And in the same vein, Theo shows also that the impact that COVID had on both international trade, production, consumption, and how all this interact. On the other side, there is strategic islands also offer the different possibilities for the maritime company to optimize their profit, to use the same tools, and to rationalize the means. So as we said here, it's what about the relation between maritime company and port with the pandemic, and what is maritime first, but also the islands. How do they interact? How do they act with each other? So regarding the methodology, we did it in two steps. First, a qualitative part to define the main parameters. To do so, we grounded our parameters on the vessel sharing agreement. And then we saw that when we're speaking about islands, we are speaking about the fact that the islands as companies discuss and agree about how which fit with vessel they use together, the size of it, the ports, the terminal, etc., the blink, sitting to, they put all this in common. So how to see how they function. So this is main points in fact of considered as an islands. So what we did in fact in our data, what we collected is gone on this. So we use IHS market database. We focus on two areas, the northern range and Mediterranean Sea, and we look at the port and maritime company. That's a different element. So we also gather data regarding the size, the number of vessels calling in each port, which manage usually at least 1 million TEU per year in the Mediterranean Sea and in the Channel and the Northern Sea. We also look at number of vessels, but also the size of the vessels that call per maritime company on a daily basis, and we consider 2019, 19 and 20. 18 being the business as usual year, as you see in the slides, and 2019 is the start of the COVID pandemic, mostly in China, but also, and we really see it's considered we may see, we strongly see its impact in 2020. So, and of course, we use the sharing agreement analysis on this one. So based on all these elements, we arrived to something like around 50 ports. We arrived to this first result, very fast one. So what we can see here inside is, if you look at this straight, it seems that in fact Mediterranean Sea are more impacted by the COVID than the northern range. And it seemed also another interesting thing that in fact if you compare 2018 with 2020, the biggest impact in fact doesn't occur with between 2019 and 2020, but more between 2018 and 2019. That's the first element. The other element is that apparently, looking at this, the port of the southern ports are much more impacted by the COVID or element than the northern one. This result has to be put in perspective with the fact that there is much more port in the south than in the north, and this analysis integrate also vessel ports with less than 500 calls per year. So very small port. It means that at this level, the evolution is strongly impacted by few vessels, more or less, more coming to the ports. So but that's something, however, it is still interesting to look at. The second result or start we received is this one. When we look at this slide, for example, what we clearly see is that when you look at 2018 and 2019 and 2020, the biggest part we can see is that in the position of Rotterdam versus Antwerp. Even if there is a strong decrease between 2019 and 2020 for Rotterdam keep its position as leader port in Europe. Even if we add the flows coming out from Zeebrugge to Antwerp, Rotterdam keep its leading position. That's the first element. The second element also we can see, which is less visible in a way, is a position of English ports. Looking at between 19 and 20, we see that the ports, English port, decrease. In fact, I mean there's less vessel calling in this port than previously. This could be, we consider that it could be a direct consequence of the Brexit, perhaps not of the COVID, which could be the case where Rotterdam, I mean, when you look at it, it could be this impact. However, globally, when you look at it, there is no big change in port hierarchy, except for the English port that decreased a little bit, but that not much, perhaps 2 or 3 places compared to previously. The big port are still the same, and the major port doesn't change that much. That's exactly what we see here in this slide. Is the position of the ports. Frankly, I mean, doesn't change that much. The same port are here, and there's no big deal, in fact, even if they get close, etc., but that doesn't change that much. On this slide, what is interesting to look is, well, if you look at Rotterdam, you see that the number of the different type of vessel, size of vessel, calling in the port, and the difference between 2018 and 2020. What we see here that is interesting, that okay, Rotterdam decreased at every level, 5,000 to 5, 10, 15, 20, or over 20,000 vessels. Rotterdam seems less attractive, or attracted less vessels compared to 2018, which is not the case for Antwerp, for example, who attracted more vessels with a capacity over 20,000 TEUs, as Hamburg, for example. Bremenhaven increased his share, in fact, its attraction with vessels between 10,000 and 15, and Liverpool, etc. Zeebrugge, a very interesting thing that Zeebrugge also attract a lot of vessels which have a capacity over 20,000 TEUs. The question we can ask here, and we are trying to look at, is there a translation or change? And the question is, would the flows lost by Rotterdam are gained by the other ports? That's not that sure. When we look at the numbers, it doesn't seem that all the vessels lost are changed to one of these ports. So something to look at here too. Now, if you look at the 1001 is, doesn't seem to be very different, except that when you look at 2019 and 2020 at the main port, the three main ports are the same. We still have Algeciras, Paris, Valencia. However, in 2020, very interesting thing that Paris became the first port regarding to Algeciras. That's the first element. The second main point we can see is the fact that Tanger, which is the second part, increased and is closer, in fact, to the three main one. That's the second very interesting element. Another interesting point is that Marseille left. So I'm sorry, Jason and Laurent, about this, but it seems that Marseille decreased a little bit. So I think it lost something like 1,000 calls between 2019 and 2020. So this could be two reasons for that. First, it could be the strike of what we call in France le gilet jaune, and also it also could be the impact of the COVID. That's something that has to be also analyzed. But here again, except this element, there is no big change, no big change in the how can I say it? In the port hierarchy in Mediterranean Sea. If you look at it, for example, except as we can see here with Tanger grow and left the second group, in fact, to get closer to the first one. The other ones stay more or less at the same position, except for Marseille, who decreased. So, in fact, it seems, according to us, that the COVID doesn't have a strong impact. What happened with COVID doesn't impact that much the port hierarchy in both Northern Range and Mediterranean Sea. If we look at here, for example, exactly the same. We see that, for example, the Paris port maybe won its first place thanks, in fact, to the 15 and 20,000 TEU vessels. Even if they also a strong growth compared to Algeciras in terms of more 2021, but that's something interesting. The question is, and that we're going to see after, is which company is at the origin of the chain and how do we explain it? We see at Marseille here losing a lot, and Tanger Med, who also here, who won a lot, almost double the flows of vessel with capacity between 10,000 and 15,000 TEUs. So apparently it seems that they made this bait and trying to look at more this, to attract more this type of the size of vessels. So this is more or less done for the port part. Let's look now at the agencies. When we look at the agencies, what happened between 2018 and now, we clearly see a clear dominance of 2M islands upon the port, meaning that here we consider, in fact, in this part, at which moment regarding the three islands, which islands has the biggest share compared to the other one. So in this case, 2M is clearly the big manager, if you want, or the boss of the northern port or southern port, meaning that the decision may have, or the ways they manage the flows may have a really strong impact, could have an impact on port management and position. When you look at it like this, for example. If you look on the other side, this is more or less the same. This is a picture of the previous slides, but more detail on different port. What we see, in fact, is more interesting, is that when you look at Rotterdam seems to be quite balanced between the three islands. Even main islands are 2M and ocean islands. The islands being little less, having little less impact on it. Clearly, 2M is in Antwerp, Bremenhaven, Le Havre, Felixstowe, Liverpool, Southampton, and Dunkirk. The big, not Dunkirk, excuse me, but Felixstowe, Le Havre, Bremenhaven, Antwerp, the big leader. Okay. If we go to the Mediterranean Sea, here again, it's the same. You see, well, Giautoro, I mean, okay, it's MSC, clearly. Algeciras also, Paris, you see it's more balanced, even if we see that there is a, which is logical in a way, the islands, ocean islands is a little more important for this sport, but globally, 2M islands is the leader in these sports. If we do a focus on, just to give you an highlight on Tangemed and Purus, this is the type of data we also we gather. What we see here, very interesting thing, is that when you look at 2019, for example, in Piraeus here, you see that Costco is important, but at this point, 2M was more as a higher impact on this sport. However, when we look here, it's different. I mean, we see that, for example, they start to have more impact. But we also see here that Tangemed, for example, in Tangemed, we see the strong impact of Merckx, meaning that when we look at Tangier, Merckx and CMA are the big leader. When we look at Purus, it is the opposite. Costco and MSC are the leader. So here we see that how the different company, and even if the islands is the most, has a strong impact, the interesting thing to look at, okay, which company in the islands is important, is parent, which company impact more than another one. So that's exactly what we saw previously with the vessel sharing agreement, that the different company posit themselves more in a terminal or in a port than the other one. So to conclude, what we see, there's no major changes in the port hierarchy, and even if Rotterdam increased, still the biggest port. Tangier may change a lot. 5,000 TEUs as the leaders containers for the ports. 2M Islands, and this is when we see here 2M Islands is leading in different ports, it means that 2M Islands represent more than 50% of the core of the vessel calling in these ports. And islands seem to benefit from unlimited rights granted the contract, even if they observe a severe critique about the shipper and post service provider during the COVID-19 outbreaks. But what about the competition about this? So I guess I try to stick to the timing. I don't know if I succeed. I wish so. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Faury. Oh, there's one question from Adolf. do you think that there will be any fundamental changes in the port system in the post-COVID-19 world?
Pardon, excuse me, I don't hear you properly. What you said?
Do you think that there will be any fundamental changes in the port system in the post-COVID-19 world?
Tough question.
I
think there will be a big change.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we could expect a big change, but and that's what we look at, is that here we just see that there is some changes. It's very complicated to, we can consider that perhaps it is due to the COVID, perhaps to the Brexit, we don't know. So we have to go further. Does the COVID has an impact on the port hierarchy? Apparently, doesn't seem to, like this. And the first picture, it doesn't seem to. Now, we probably have to go deeper to this and to look at the period, the time, to look at the week or the month, the vessel call, compared to business as usual year, to see if there is one. Because it doesn't mean that one segment, you see, to see which segment, which type of vessel call in this port. If you lose this, what does it go to see how it's function? We need to go deeper. In my point of view, we need to go much deeper to define if the COVID will dramatically change the port management. Apparently, it doesn't seem to. It may enhance. It may act as a catalyst, if you want. It may speed some effect. But when you look at Tanger evolution doesn't start in 2020. It started far before. If you look at Piraeus evolution, it's due to Costco. Costco doesn't arrive in Paris in 2020. It arrived previously. So you see that the question is to see the effect of the COVID and what, and try to dismantle it, to separate it from the current strategy of the alliances and of the alliances and of the of the alliances and maritime company. I don't know if I answered your question. Or do you speak about the port system perhaps more?
Okay.
Okay, the port system. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, Adolphe. I thought about the port hierarchy.
Yep.
Possible. Yeah, at this level, I would say that the port system. Yeah.
Oh, it's the same question. I just
yeah, it's possibly. I mean, it's like this. It's give me some time to look more details to my data, and I will give you my feedback. I would say.
No,
I need to
Olivier,
go deeper in it.
We always have a lot of opportunities to talk more about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I mean, I will discuss about it later, but I think I don't know. Frankly, I mean, it's the big question I was asking to myself was looking at Rotterdam flows. Is about 3,000 vessels left Rotterdam. Where they are? Is it? Well, I mean, there is not 3,000 vessels in other ports. Something is missing. So, is it a change? What is the origin? What I want to look at still is at the week to understand if it's a change. I know that Theo did analyze the number of TU. So it's give you an idea about the capacity to uploading and loading. Here it's just a type of vessel. So, I mean, has to be digging as a question a lot. Okay. To drill, not digging at this level, it's dig, is drill. It's a deep water drill.
Okay, I think that's a good discussion. So we are going to move to the next presentation. Thank you again, Dr. Faury. The next presenter is Professor Simone. from the University of Bologna. His main research areas are road pavement materials, maintenance and design of pavement structures, road safety analysis, road design, and human factor interaction. Professor Simone, please share your screen when you are ready.
Absolutely. Now I take the screen. Hi to everyone. I hope that you see the first page here. I hope so. So if you are okay and you hear me, I can start. So first of all, I want to thank you for the invitation. For me, it's a pleasure to be part of this important conference. And also I want to thank my colleagues, Roberto Battistini, that helped me for this presentation. Don't worry, I try to stay in the 50 minutes. I want to only show you some new approach and also new study we made in the analysis of behaviors of travelers and users, mobility users in our campus, University Campus of Bologna, not only in Bologna, but other cities in our region. Also to show to you some results, what happens during COVID emergency, and also now what happens probably in the next, in the collective analysis of collective transport, and also the last not the least, some of the policies that the university was made in order to improve the resiliency and the sustainability of our mobility. Some words about the introduction, only to remember that accessibility, mobility are one of the main problems connected to human people. And also now there is a new approach to the evaluation of accessibility in terms of ability to assess not only to work, to health, or to study, but also to access to decision. And also it's important to remember that also we have a new approach that, remember, to all of us, not only Europe, but all over the world, that you have to underline the concept of urban divide. It's important to remember that the possibility to move not only for pedestrian, but also for all the users for length is more than 5 to 10 kilometers is important for all the people that live in urban areas. And also I want to remember that there is a big change in the last decades about the transportation system. First of all, the first time I perceived it as a relevant driving force to economy. In this second part, in the last 20 years, it's clear to everyone that is also produce negative impact. It's important to remember that 58% of the CO2 emission are connected to mobility. Also, there is a change also in urbanism and in urbanistic approach in terms of to evaluate the street not only as a road, but now also as a space to live and to connect. So absolutely, the sustainable mobility is important not only for urban mobility, but also for all the mobility that we have for not only person, but also for the logistic point of view, from the point of view. And also we have now a big change starting from February 2020. Remember that in Italy, we have probably the first wave starting from in February, and also we are the first country in Europe that they have to approach this emergency. What happens in the first month? In the first month, we have a big change in terms of reducing of mobility. Only workers go to move from a house, and also we have a big increase also of public transport, but not so much as we want. We also want to underline that we have a big change also in reduction in pollutants. You remember that in Italy, we have a very well-known region that is called Pianura Padana. There's a flat side in our region between Alps and Apennines that have a big problems connected to pollutants. And during the first month of the 2020, we have a big reduction and a big increase of the air quality. So what we can say, there is also a problem connected to what we feel when we use public transport. So it's possible to compare what happens in 2019 and what happens in 2020 and now in 2021 in the use of public transport, buses, metro, tram, and so on. We have the first study, not only in our region, but also from Sweden, from also Sicily, and so on, that a lot of people that generally use public transport feel a sense of insecurity, feel a risk, feel that is a risky situation for being infected. So probably this type of condition, this type of approach probably will uprise and will be a change in the use of soft mobility, such as bicycle, scooter, walking, and also moped. What we can say that the first research that you find in literature probably confirm that we have some connection between the public transport use and higher risk to be have a COVID-19 virus emergency. So for this reason, we have to try to change also our point of view for the use of collective transport and public transport. Now I show you some data that comes from the University of Bologna. University of Bologna is the ancient in the Western world. In the first year that we have teachers and students is 188. So we have more than 900 years of history. Nowadays, we have approximately 84,000 students, not only in Bologna, but also in our region, in different little municipalities near Bologna, Imola, Forlì, Cesena, Ravenna, Rimini, and so on. So we have a lot of place and also a lot of connection and also needs to move. Students now have an increase in the last years. Also during the COVID emergency, we have an increase in the students. This is the map of our city of Bologna, where we have at the beginning, we have a very, very integrated urbanism. Now we have a new tradition, decentralized campus. So we have not only the campus, the historical city center, we have not only students and absolutely lessons, but also lab and also other very important site, also in the peri-urban area. So what is important, also the connection with buses, cycle route, and so on. We have some data from a specific survey that we made through Instagram, very, very quick survey, and also through a very traditional online survey, where we obtained approximately 3,500 answers from all the students and also some members of the university staff. This type of research, this type of survey is called Passa col Verde, so pass with green in the traffic light. We obtained data, before the COVID emergency, but also during the COVID emergency, starting from February to June 2021. So, which are the main questions? We ask if you have they use of thing to change the transportation mode of transport during the post-lockdown scenario. Also, the question about the use of bike, buses, and also a final question connected to the safe safe situation, if they feel safe or not in the bicycle, walking, buses, and car use. Also, we obtained the data not only from the Instagram survey, but also from the very normal, typical online survey that was shown to everyone using the portal unibod.it. And now I want to show you, I have time to show you some results. The average community daily time is about 45 minutes, so it's not so short. Also, someone expressed after the COVID emergency, they want to change housing, and also they only 32 students has expressed the positive feeling about the on-distance teaching, the online teaching. So sure, I want to confirm that we have the online teaching, but the a great part of the student feel that it's better to have a face-to-face meeting and to have a direct contact with the teacher and during the lab, in the lab. Also, 28% of people indicate that they need to change transportation. So probably in the future, in order to reach university, probably we have an increase in walk, bicycle, and also standalone use of cars. So probably you have to change something in order to use bicycle and walking, but also try to increase the safer approach for buses and collective transport. This is the correlation between distance and the modal shift before lockdown scenario. This is before. So where we have short distance, we use walk and bicycle. For longer distance, absolutely car and train and rail. Before lockdown, so we have rail, walking, and buses. After lockdown, what happens? The attitude to change transportation habits in post-lockdown, 28% answer yes, and probably also said that probably they want to or to try to use the online type of teaching and also try to use more sustainable mode of transport, also by a change in the housing choice. So you know that is very important also to find the right place to live in order to have a shorter distance to go to the teaching room. In the post-lockdown, we have also some evaluated some reason to change the transportation mode of transport, and now we found also the answer connected to high pandemic risk perceived. 60% said that they don't feel safe in some public transport situation. So it's possible to try to increase this safer point of view in order to increase the use of bus and public transport, probably yes, but now we have a very low percentage of people that said, sure, I will use bus also in post-lockdown scenario. So what I want to underline that connected to the sustainable point of view, in order to increase the air quality, to increase the healthy condition of the city, and to also obtain social benefits, now we have a new, say, parameter to evaluate the mobility trend of students, but also of professor and teaching staff, connected to the virus spread reduction. So probably in the future, also the evaluation of the transportation mobility needs need also to analyze this point of view. Which are, and this is the last part of my presentation, which are the measures that we apply in our university in order to improve the sustainable mobility. We have a specific project called the Alma Bike Project with the contest for students to design a connected bike and production of 600 specific model of Alma Bike that was used by students. Also, we have a specific sensor to evaluate the quality of air quality in 50 of this kind of new bike, and we start to have this data starting from this month. So I hope that we can show you the results of this analysis also as soon as possible. And also there is a change in the use of bike. We have an increase of use of bike. Bike now in Bologna is one of the main mode of transport, also for students. So for this reason, we have an increase of parking slot, new type of bicycle network, new quality of railway network with the multimodal station, where you have the possibility to use also and to park the bicycle inside the rail in order to move free between the main city of the campus of our region and the city center of Bologna. I want to thank you again for this opportunity to show our work and this new approach that we want to try to connect the sustainability movement and also absolutely the resiliency in terms of answer when the emergency, the COVID emergency arrive. Thank you again, and I'm ready for your question.
Professor Simone, I have a question. Yeah, so
now
what was...
I try to stop the sharing the screen in order to show you also yourself. So thank you. This is a question, yeah, sure. Representation.
Yeah, my question is, what's the reason given by the students for the challenge with the online teaching? Is it just not having contact with the professor, or they were not used to staying behind a PC for a long time and just listening?
There are, for all the students, there are the possibility to stay with the professor. Said it is better. Why? Because it's a more efficient way to study. So sure, it's possible to absolutely follow in the right way if you have a good connection the lesson with the so-called, we call it blended way. So starting from your house with your PC, your laptop, and so on. But the students said that for them it is more efficient in terms of what remain in their mind to be part of the lesson face-to-face, in the face-to-face meeting. At the beginning, in the very beginning, in February, March 2020, everything is new. Also, this kind of online lecture is new, and probably also the students are much more motivated. So, and also the professor, and probably is not so bad at the beginning. But during the month when we have in September, October, the new lesson, and also during February 2021 and so on, the new semester, the students said if it's possible, they prefer to be part of the lecture. What I said to you that nowadays, and also for the next academic year in Bologna University, all the lessons are made in the parallel way. So it's possible to follow the lesson on site in the room, but also connected by the online webinar.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor Simone. I think that's the only question I see right now. If there are no more, we can maybe call it a day then. What do you think, Adolf?
Yeah, sure. I think before we end, first, thank you very much for all the speakers and all the participants. And of course, thank you very much to Travis too. So before I end the day, once again, thanks to everyone for participating in the conference and today. So please remember that we do have a day free tomorrow, starting at 4 p.m. France time. So that will be the last day of the conference, and we still have a number of speakers talking, giving presentations that is related to the theme of the conference. So hopefully, if you have time and interested, please join us for the day tomorrow. And so once again, thank you very much, and I would call it a day for today's conference. And so thank you, and I see you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. And bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Yes.